Picture this: Las Vegas, 1973. The lights are blazing, the crowd is roaring, and in the middle of it all, something no one could have imagined happens. Four men suddenly surge toward the stage, aiming straight for the king himself. In that split second, the audience gasps, security scrambles, and Elvis makes a move so unexpected that it left fans talking for decades. But here's the real question: was this just a wild, drunken stunt, or the tip of something far more sinister? It was February 1973 in Las Vegas, just weeks after Elvis Presley had conquered the world with his legendary Aloha from Hawaii broadcast. The king returned to the desert city carrying the weight of that historic performance, but behind the glittering spotlight, things weren't as smooth as they appeared. He was tired, worn down from the relentless pace, and battling health struggles that his fans could only guess at. Some nights he complained of a burning throat, his voice straining under the dry Vegas air, while whispers suggested the medications he relied on were taking their toll. Still, Elvis was expected to step out, night after night, and deliver the kind of magic only he could create. Inside the Las Vegas Hilton showroom, the atmosphere was electric. The stage gleamed under the spotlights, outfitted with a long ramp that jutted out toward the crowd, much like the one he had used in Hawaii. It gave him a direct connection to his fans, pulling them into his performance in ways no other entertainer dared attempt. The intimate setting of the showroom meant that everyone felt close to Elvis, almost within arm's reach, and the crowd buzzed with anticipation, waiting for him to appear. But among the sea of excited fans sat a curious group. Four men and one woman had claimed a table near the front, their presence noticeable, their energy just slightly off. At first glance, they might have seemed like any other group of concert-goers, drinks in hand, ready for a night of music. Yet there was something unsettling about them, a sense that they weren't there simply to be entertained. As the lights dimmed and the show began, their behavior would soon shift from unusual to unforgettable, setting into motion a chain of events unlike anything Elvis, or his audience, had ever seen before. The evening began like so many others in Las Vegas, with laughter echoing through the room as Elvis's opening comedian worked to warm up the crowd. But in the midst of the jokes and applause, something unusual started happening. From the front tables, empty beer bottles began to roll deliberately across the stage, clinking and spinning until they struck the performers' feet. At first, some thought it was just careless behavior from rowdy fans, but as the bottles kept coming, a strange chill settled over the room. It wasn't playful, it wasn't accidental, it was deliberate, and it cast a shadow over what should have been a joyful night. Then came an even more unsettling moment, one that seemed almost surreal. As Elvis performed just a few songs into his set, the woman seated with the peculiar group stood up and calmly stepped onto a table. With steady, measured steps, she walked toward the ramp that led directly to the stage. The audience held its breath, expecting the usual chaos of an eager fan rushing to hug Elvis. Instead, she approached him in silence, her expression almost trance-like, reached out with two fingers, and gently slid the scarf from around his neck. Without a word, she turned and walked back, placing the scarf in the hands of the man who appeared to be leading the group. The entire exchange was so odd, so restrained, that it left both Elvis and the audience unnerved. From that point forward, an unmistakable tension filled the showroom. Elvis, usually quick to smile and joke with his fans, seemed on edge, his body language tighter, his movements sharper. The crowd sensed it too. This wasn't the familiar, playful energy of a typical Vegas show. It felt different, almost dangerous. Every glance toward that group in the front row deepened the unease, and the audience couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger, something far more troubling, was building just beneath the surface. As the familiar chords of suspicious minds filled the showroom, the atmosphere shifted once again. This was one of Elvis's signature numbers, a moment fans always looked forward to, and the energy in the room swelled with anticipation. Elvis moved with his usual flair, leaning into the rhythm, his voice carrying with effortless power despite the strain he'd been feeling offstage. The spotlight reflected off his jeweled jumpsuit, making him seem almost untouchable, larger than life. Yet underneath that brilliance, a storm was about to break. Near the song's finale, Elvis slipped into the moves that had become one of his trademarks: sharp, fluid karate gestures punctuating the beat. The crowd roared, loving every second, unaware that these movements would take on a chilling significance in mere moments. Out of the corner of their eyes, some in the audience noticed sudden movement at the front. Two men had leapt from their table and were charging up the ramp, their intent all too clear. Before the first wave could even be contained, two more followed, rushing the stage with alarming determination. Gasps ripped through the crowd as the surreal sight unfolded. Bodyguards who had been stationed nearby scrambled into action, sprinting toward the attackers. The band played on in the background, the music clashing oddly with the chaos erupting on stage. Audience members stood frozen, some screaming, others straining to see what was happening. It all unfolded in a matter of seconds, yet in the heat of the moment, time seemed to slow. The king was no longer just performing. Suddenly, he was at the center of a real confrontation, and no one knew how far it would go. In the swirl of chaos, one figure managed to break past the line of defense. As security wrestled with the first wave of intruders, a single man pushed through and reached the top of the ramp. In that split second, he stood face to face with Elvis himself. The room seemed to freeze, the air thick with shock and disbelief. No one knew what would happen next, but Elvis did not hesitate. Years of discipline and instinct kicked in as he spun and delivered a sudden karate strike, sending the man tumbling from the stage. The crowd erupted, half in terror, half in awe, as they realized they had just witnessed something they would never forget. The scene that followed was absolute pandemonium. Bodyguards lunged at the remaining men, dragging them down in a flurry of fists and shouts, while uniformed officers rushed in from the sides to slap on handcuffs. Yet amid the storm, the music never stopped. The band bizarrely continued playing as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening, their notes clashing against the chaos unfolding only a few feet away. Audience members stood, screaming, pointing, craning their necks to see. The spectacle of a Vegas show had been transformed into something raw, dangerous, and utterly real. And then came Elvis's fury. Red-faced and shaking, he surged toward the fray, his voice booming with anger. It took both Vernon Presley, his father, and Tom Diskin, his manager, to hold him back, their arms wrapped around him as he shouted threats that echoed through the showroom. His rage was palpable, unlike anything the fans had ever seen from him before. In that moment, Elvis was no longer the polished entertainer they had come to adore. He was a man pushed to his limits, fighting not only to defend himself, but to prove that no one, no matter how bold, could ever challenge him on his own stage. When the chaos finally subsided and the stage was cleared, Elvis turned back to the microphone, his chest heaving with adrenaline. The audience waited in stunned silence, unsure of what to expect next. Then, with fire still burning in his eyes, he growled into the mic, "I'll never let another man do this at my show." His words cracked through the room like thunder, and in that instant the crowd erupted, their cheers and applause crashing over him like a wave. The declaration wasn't just a promise. It was a warning, and it electrified the air as Elvis seized back control of the moment. Yet backstage, the story took a darker turn. Shaken and furious, Elvis became convinced the attack hadn't been random. In his mind, the intruders were no ordinary troublemakers. He suspected they had been sent deliberately, perhaps by Mike Stone, Priscilla Presley's new partner at the time. The divorce had left wounds that were still fresh, and paranoia seemed to fuel his rage. Some close to him would later claim that Elvis even toyed with the idea of arranging a hit on Stone before his anger cooled. The thought alone revealed just how rattled and how deeply personal the night's events had become. This wasn't an isolated outburst. By 1973, Elvis was living under a constant cloud of unease in Las Vegas. The city's glamour masked a darker reality, a place where fame and fortune attracted as many enemies as admirers. Death threats weren't uncommon, and the king was all too aware of the dangers that lurked beyond the spotlight. The attack on stage had tapped into his worst fears, leaving him not just shaken but on edge, his trust eroded, and his sense of safety fractured. For Elvis, the tension of that night wasn't something that ended when the curtain fell. It was a chilling reminder of the volatile world he was forced to navigate. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more untold moments from Elvis's incredible life, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video. Don't forget to like this video. It really helps more fans discover these fascinating stories. And I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this unbelievable night? Do you think it was just a random outburst or something much deeper? Share your opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going.